Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019. We'll start with a roll call, please.
Brian Kelly. Here. Medina Atchison. Here. Sherry Budd. Here. Donald Boynton. Here. Jeff Jar. Here. Joan Franzoy. Here. Carol Thompson. Here.
We have an agenda before us. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Commissioner Boynton, support Commissioner Kelly. Any additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the agenda is approved. We have minutes from the meeting of May 8th, 2019. Is there a motion to approve the May 8th minutes?
Motion to approve is presented.
Commissioner Jar, support.
Support.
Commissioner Franzoy. Any corrections or changes? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the May 8th minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the minutes are approved. First item on tonight's agenda is a public hearing. The applicant, Andrea, let me make sure I get your last name right, Andrea Ratasky? Ratasky is requesting to rezone the property located at 13414 Martinsville Road from M1 Light Industrial to R1B Single Family Residential. The subject property is located on Martinsville Road, parcel ID number 83-105-99-0002-000. We'll start first with a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Commissioner Boynton, support Commissioner Kelly. All in favor, say aye. And the public hearing is now open. We'll have a short presentation by the applicant and then take any comments on this agenda item. We'll start first, though, with you, Ms. Ratasky. Please.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Ratasky, formerly Andrea Gornick. I've lived in the township for over 20 years. My home at 13414 Martinsville has served me very, very well. I was recently married last November, so I now reside with my husband in Bloomfield Hills. We put our residence on Martinsville up for sale about a month ago and was approached by one of my neighbors telling us that they had gone through the rezoning process, unbeknownst to me that our property was zoned light industrial. So with my realtor's efforts and with Mr. Akers' efforts, we have come before you to ask for a rezoning so that the new owners can successfully secure a mortgage. And we are in the process of a sale. We have an offer and we have accepted it, and we are just waiting for a closing date. So we wanted to do our due diligence and make sure that this was properly rezoned or in the rezoning process before the new owners took possession.
Great. Thank you very much. So Director Akers, similar to other properties, similarly having to rezone on Martinsville Road, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. All right. Anyone in the audience, questions or comments for this agenda item? Anyone at the Planning Commission?
Through the chair, I just want to state for the record that anybody that knows Medina Atchison, formerly Andrea Gornick, we have been good friends. We've worked on several things together. So I just want to state that for the record. I don't know if you would choose to have me recused. I have no financial gain in this situation whatsoever. Actually, I feel like it's a financial loss to let Andrea move out of our township. I tried to convince her and her fiance to stay. So I just want that stated for the record, please.
Thanks so much. Anyone have an issue with Commissioner Atchison? No, none. All right, all good. Last chance, anyone in the audience to comment in the public hearing section will come up next to discussion of the application. All right, motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Commissioner Boynton. Support Commissioner Atchison. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks. The public hearing is closed. And the new business, the next item, is a rezoning for the same parcel, same applicant. Anything else to add at this point? Good, you did a great job the first time around. So we actually have a recommendation from staff. Stamper, are you presenting tonight? That would be great. You want to walk us through it, please?
So as was already stated, this is the same type of rezoning request that the commission has approved, I think 3 or 4 over the past couple months. So I won't go line by line through it unless the commission wants me to. But it is for 13414 Martinsville. It's approximately 0.94 acres. located on the west side of Martinsville between Huron River Drive and Savage Roads. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property from M1 light industrial to R1B single family residential. It is currently being used residentially, and it is master planned for R1B residential. So then, just to get to staff's recommendation, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the request to rezone parcel 83-105-99-0002-000, 13414 Martinsville Road from M1 light industrial to R1B single family residential.
Excellent, thank you. Questions or comments from the commission for either staff or the applicant? Anyone in the audience? Seems pretty straightforward, and you've done an excellent job laying out all of the cause and reasons. Is there a motion?
That we recommend to the Township Board that they rezone the property as requested, 13414 Martinsville Road, from M1 Light Industry to R1B Single Family Residential, listing all the positive reasons.
Support.
Support. Commissioner Boynton, was that you? Commissioner Boynton, support. Any discussion on the motion? This is a roll call vote, please.
Joan Franzoy,
Yes.
Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Donald Boynton,
Aye.
Brian Kelly,
Yes.
Medina Atchison.
Yes.
Sherry Bug.
Yes.
Yes. So now it goes forward to the Township Board for their final approval on the rezoning. Thanks so much, and we wish you the best of luck. Good luck with the sale. Next item on tonight's agenda, under general discussion, item number 1 is the senior housing development options. This was a topic that we had discussed a couple of meetings ago, and we now have some information and possible considerations. And we're going to hear first from McKenna Associates, right? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you had summarized, the township had expressed an interest in providing in the zoning ordinance for senior housing types. At your March meeting, my colleague Patrick Sloan had presented what the current ordinance regulations were, and he was directed by the Planning Commission to research other communities and come up with information of how this is handled in other communities. Now, based upon the current trends, senior housing is definitely, there is a need for it in every community to allow people to age in place. When it gets to a stage where people can no longer manage taking care of a single family home, they would rather not move out of the community but stay in a community where they've spent most of their life. I looked at several communities, and some of the most prominent ones are featured over here. One of them was Lime Township, which is located in Oakland County. It's one of the fastest growing townships in Michigan. The township allows for senior housing as a principal permitted use in both the multiple family residential districts, in one of their larger parcel size single family districts, and in the agricultural districts. And their zoning ordinance has provisions for 3 different types of senior housing. One is independent living, one is dependent living, and then they also have for continuing care, which is a combination of independent and dependent. That basically includes Alzheimer's care, memory care, those kind of facilities. The ordinance specifically has got design standards and density standards as to how many units, senior housing units you can provide, greenbelt standards. It also allows the development to provide for additional commercial uses that are limited to the residents only, like open space recreational amenities or a salon, spa, but all those would be limited to the residents of that development only. So Lime Township has those provisions. The other one we looked at is Orion Charter Township up in northern Oakland County. It has a population of about 32,000, and senior housing is a principal permitted use in their multiple family residential district only, but they do have a lot of multiple family. So it is provided for quite a bit in the township. Once again, there are specific design requirements, including passive recreational opportunities and landscaping requirements, so that it acts as a buffer between single-family neighborhoods and any senior housing as multiple family. We then, in Wayne County, we looked at the city of Inkster, has a population of about 25,300, and the city allows senior housing as a special land use in the multiple family district. And once again, they have pretty detailed standards, such as ingress and egress has to be off a major thoroughfare, there have to be green belts on the perimeters, and you have to provide recreational opportunity for the residents, so on and so forth. The fourth example I've included for you is the city of Rochester. I happen to be the planning consultant for the city of Rochester, and in the last 2 years, we have approved over, I would say, 150 senior housing units over there. It is a small community, it's only 4 square miles on size, but this aging in place is a very significant use that has come up over there. The city has got a very special provision in its zoning ordinance, which is called as special projects. Using the special projects umbrella, the Planning Commission can pretty much approve any use anywhere within the special project boundary, which actually covers half the city. So the senior housing that has been approved has been placed mostly in industrial districts, but it's also been placed in areas that are in the future master plan for multiple family, mixed use, and commercial areas. In fact, one is a stone's throw away from their downtown area. So, and there are very detailed design requirements. When they are approved under the special projects umbrella, the city expects the design quality and standards to be much higher than what would be expected even for a conditional use. So the quality of development is really up there, but it is a facility that definitely serves the community as a good benefit. Based upon the development trends we have seen, there is definitely a need for senior housing in our community, and it provides an opportunity, as I mentioned, for people to age in place in the community. Now, allowing this as a conditional use would be the appropriate thing to do, because as a conditional use, the township still has some measure of control in the design and the impacts that it possibly can have in the neighboring properties. So at this time, we would recommend that the Planning Commission consider allowing this as a conditional use in the multiple family residential districts, and you could also consider expanding it into the light industrial districts. It is not a bad transition use, provided the green belts and other design requirements are put in for this. So based upon the direction I get tonight from the Planning Commission, I can bring back something for you to look at.
Excellent. Thank you. That's very informative. Questions or comments for Vidya, for staff?
I guess I had a problem when I read industrial zoning for senior housing. When I think of industrial zoning, it isn't probably where I would want to have.
Homes
Yeah,
for
right.
seniors. I think the industrial parcels are generally larger in the area. Many a times when these senior housing projects come, for the developer to be able to provide the amenities necessary to support the development, they need a higher density. They need to be able to put in more units. So for that, you need larger parcels of land. We do, and when we are recommending industrial, we are recommending only the lighter, not in the M2 or the MT, but possibly the M1 that abuts multiple families. So it sort of will not be too far away. It's not putting a senior housing in the middle of a heavy industrial district or just backing it off something. It's just something to look at if in case our inventory of available RM parcels is not enough to meet the need of the community. Just considering that.
Yes, ma'am. Can you come up to the podium, please? Of course, please.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak. My name is Beth Arnett, and I represent Clover Development, which is a senior living development group, and we are currently looking at Van Buren Township, so I do have some interest in what happens here tonight. And I was hoping just to give a little perspective from the development side
That would be very helpful.
of what we're looking for. So we're working in multiple communities in Michigan currently. We're in government approvals for 5 different communities in Michigan, and we have properties throughout New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and Indiana. So we work in a lot of communities. And one of the biggest thing we're looking for is total flexibility. But realistically, what I'm seeing most often is we do need the acreage. As your planner was just saying, when we come in, we're looking at approximately 120 units because lesser units don't make sense financially to us. So we are looking at 2 to 4 stories. My developments personally are 3 stories, but we're looking for 2 to 4 stories. So we do typically find a lot of light industrial property, which we do have sufficient green space and provide a buffer to. We don't pay commercial, we can't pay, we're not a big box big box company. We can't pay to be on main road frontage. So we're usually looking to be that step back, and that typically is a transition zone. Most communities have a fear or have reason to say we have enough multifamily. So typically there's not a lot of properties located in the multifamily zoning that have any acreage to come into. So we're typically asking for zoning consideration. What we've found, what I prefer, is actually a PUD or similar to Bloomfield, having a special provisions district. It is a unique development. We are trying to provide, and there's probably 3 levels of senior independent living. So we provide a very basic apartment building with, we have pull cords, we have group amenities, but we do not provide meals. The next level up is going to provide full meals, they're going to provide hair salons, they're going to provide medical services in-house. But that's when you're talking about a retirement home pricing. So, for instance, who I work for, we are a multifamily independent market rate developer. Our goal is, and we're not the only one out there, our goal is someone can sell their house and live with us for 10 years and spend the proceeds of their house and not have to dip into their retirement and their Social Security. So that's our goal. The next level up is full care, where you're getting full meals, you're having services provided in-house. So that's kind of the in-between to memory care and nursing services. So at our rate, we're coming in, we're usually asking for variances. Parking is a big issue. Our residents don't have more than 1 car. Our typical resident is 82 years old and is a single female. They have 1 vehicle, occasionally there's 2, and very often there's no vehicles. So we don't need more than 1 parking space per unit. We don't have staff. We have 3 staff members that are there. So we don't have 14 nurses coming in on every shift. But because there is such a difference between independent, quasi-independent, and dependent, I encourage you to think a little bit more about the special provisions or keeping it as a conditional or a special use in more areas that you have acreage. And then looking at each proposal individually, because what is being provided will dictate the needs of the property. So if this is something you're seeking, putting a box on is gonna create variances. And you're gonna have developers in making that request every time. We're not a retailer, we don't fit into that category, and we're not a multifamily apartment. Our units are not designed to ever become anything but senior care. And, you know, from our standpoint, and I'm sure other developers have done the same, we will deed restrict our property to 55 and older. So those properties aren't going to be changed over. And it is something that you can require if you have a special use or if you have some additional level of review. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, that's very helpful to see it from your vantage point. Can you tell me about what's the square footage of a unit in one of your developments?
So, yeah, absolutely. Our 1 bedroom, and we have very few 1 bedrooms, usually only about 2% of our property is 1 bedroom, is about 800 square feet. Our 2 bedroom, 1 bath is 1,000 square feet. and our 2-bedroom, 2-bath is 1,200.
Okay, good. And so if you're looking for a parcel to do approximately 120 units, what size parcel are you looking for?
Well, so our building envelope, depending on zoning, our building envelope can fit as small as 6 acres. Typically, we're looking at 10 to 12 acres to meet density requirements. I would say the sweet spot is right around 8 to 10 acres.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
For the, yeah.
Now that we've got you here.
Absolutely, that's why I came. I'm glad to have conversation.
Thanks for coming. When you're looking for a property for this type of development, what sort of surrounding amenities are you looking for?
Absolutely, we're looking to be close. We don't need to be on top of it. We are looking to be close to healthcare, and we're looking to be close to shopping and churches.
Ah.
So, part of that aging in place is staying at your parish, using your same doctors, and going to your same stores. Your grocery store is your grocery store. Nobody wants to switch their Meijer up, So we want to be within an easy, typically perfect case scenario is a right in and a right out of our development to get to the Meijer, get to the Kroger. We want to be nearest the parishes and familial roads.
So primarily you want to be in the development center of the community, not off in the agricultural, the rolling countryside isn't really what you're looking for. You want to
We
be
want to
more
be
in the
right
center.
outside of it. So
Understood.
a couple of our, just some scenarios, a couple of our developments are behind a Home Depot, or we're an outlot to a Meijer. So we'll take that space that retail's kind of going, there's no frontage. But yet you can still take the easy road to get to that store. So no, we don't want to be out there because no one wants, it's not as much the view, it's the proximity to what you know and where you want to be.
Is not allowing this use in a zone a detriment to you pursuing development in our community? If we had it listed specifically in certain zones, would you target those zones, or would you just normally go find the property and go for the variance?
So we're, from our standpoint, because of the acreage we need, the first two things I'm looking at is the acreage, the price of the property, and then the demographics. So where the demographics take us, and by the way, the demographics are great in Van Buren. We want to be in Van Buren. So once we've looked at that, now we're looking at the zoning. If we're not going to pursue an R1, we're not going to pursue a single family zoning. We don't want to fight with neighbors. It's not productive for either of us. So agricultural, if we see a light industrial, or if we're in a multifamily zone, we're definitely going to pursue it. And we're going to start with a conversation with the community. So that's our first step is this a desired use? If this is a desired use, how can we make it happen? And typically, I would say it's a PUD, is how it's happening mainly in Michigan.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Franzoy.
Are your apartments income restricted?
They are not. We are 100% market rate.
Okay.
So that's a whole separate group that does that, and we are not part of that.
Other comments? Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Yes, Director Akers.
I just have a brief comment. Based on some of the feedback we heard about looking for areas which are outside of commercial centers and commercial areas, existing churches, and Ms. Christian and I had talked about it earlier today as well. As in addition to the industrial district, it may be a good idea to also consider adding these types of uses as conditional land use or special land uses in some of our commercial districts or mixed-use district as well. The reason why I point that out is because the area that is being highlighted, is in and around Belleville Road. And a lot of the current zoning in and around Belleville Road not only ties in some light industrial, but, north of Tyler, it ties into that mixed-use district as well. So that could open up a lot of available property, which would not only fit what some of these companies are looking for, but, it would also provide unique development opportunities for us as well.
Are you thinking any zoning district, it would be special use?
No, I don't know that it may be appropriate for the single-family districts.
Okay.
But I know, like with mixed-use districts, we do allow apartment houses and multiple family type uses as well. So I think it'll be an easy transition into that district. And then for the commercial districts, we do have commercial districts which front on some of the roads which are outside of the area as well. And those type of developments tend to fit in relatively nicely, in those districts along the major corridors as well. So I think, adding that additional flexibility will, give more ample opportunities for developers to be able to come in and find property which works to fit their criteria. Ms. Christian and I will work together. We'll work to come up with some appropriate site development standards, and if the Planning Commission is okay, we can look at some type of special provisions or PUD options as well. But at this point, I guess we're just looking for direction to see if the Planning Commission wants to move in that direction.
Okay, great. I know we had very positive responses last time that we wanted to see something coming back, but any more direction or any more specifics or something that you're hearing tonight that is attractive or not a direction you want us to go? Any of the commissioners?
I don't think it's, you had suggested that in Rochester, they have basically a special provision that if they want to put in a senior living complex, the Planning Commission has a carte blanche to be able to essentially put it there. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea.
Yep.
For Van Buren Township, might work great in Rochester, but for Van Buren Township, I'm not sure that's how I'd want to see it happen. I think it's better to have this be a use that's specified in the zones, as maybe as special use or maybe as a listed use in the zones. But expanding the zones in which we can put this type of development would seem to be beneficial to our community. So I think exploring a list of zones that would make sense to have this added to is worth exploring. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it explored more.
Through the chair, with what Commissioner Jar is saying, I'm hoping that staff is going to put together identifying some property, 10 to 12 acres or 8 to 10 acres that we can provide to is it Arnett? Arnett? Okay, Cloverdale Clover Development? Okay, that we identify those properties for them. Is that something that's reasonable to ask, that we just identify them within Van Buren Township and say these are possibilities?
Yeah, we can. We certainly have the capacity to identify which parcels are 6 acres in size, 12 acres in size. And when we hone it down to the zoning districts that we think we're going to utilize for this use, then absolutely we'll do that.
Madam Chair, just to respond to Commissioner Jar, the Rochester example was given just to provide the commission with an idea of how it's being handled around Metro Detroit. It's a very unusual way of handling it, but it works just for them. It's a concept I've not seen done anywhere else, but it seems to be wildly successful for them. So, but here I would definitely, my recommendation as a planner would be that we consider the senior living, as Ms. Arnett stated, it was referred to by most people as 55 and bolder. That's the correct word to use. They said do not use the term older, it's 55 and bolder. So we draft an ordinance to consider it as a special land use in several districts, and by making it a special land use, we can build in development standards so that it gives flexibility so that if there is a demonstration by an applicant that excessive parking is not required, the planning commission would have the ability to make a recommendation rather than send them for a variance, which doesn't make sense. So depending upon the project, the special land use development standards would be tailored to allow for flexibility and recommendations. So that's something I can work with Director Akers, and we can bring back like a draft ordinance for you to show where this use would be allowed for the bold people, so.
Okay, so we're starting with the independent living for seniors. Are we also going to be looking at more dependent uses as well as a different ordinance or part of the same ordinance, or we're not ready to go there yet? What are you thinking?
The senior housing ordinance will cover dependent, independent, and assisted living care. It's actually a whole package. So you can put in extra requirements to make sure that when it is fully assisted, that if there are nurses and full-time care professionals, that accommodations are made for those people also. But essentially, the use would go as a group because dependent, independent, Alzheimer's, memory care, they sort of go together as
That makes
companies
sense
that
to me.
typically develop it, some of the companies, they prefer to do it depending upon what the market dictates. They either provide only independent living, or if the community dictates and that's where it's profitable, they might do dependent or they might do full care. So it would be good for us to consider all three of it as a single use, but put in extra standards for the more intensive of those uses.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone else in the audience? Anything else from the commission?
Madam Chair,
Sure.
just,
Commissioner Boyd.
just briefly, on what my two esteemed colleagues just mentioned, and also very well, very well spoken, Ms. Krishna from McKenna. I believe that the general consensus may be a hybrid of all of the pieces that we have seen so far. I support my colleague's position on not having it too broad, and also the ability to be able to work with any developer that is coming in. Again, we know our ordinances better than anyone else. If it makes sense to decrease the parking or to make any other type of adjustment, such as how much green space on the property, how much density, so on and so on and so on. We should have that flexibility to be able to do that so that we are not increasing a burden on any developing company that's coming in, but also still maintaining a consistent manner of operating and developing the community.
I agree.
So there are then some criteria set up to qualify as senior housing. So we're staying strong with our other multiple housing and the reasons that we have those design and requirements for multiple, but allowing something different in seniors with a certain number of criteria already being met. Is that the direction?
Yes.
All right.
Does.
All right. Great. We look forward to having something come back that we can look at and review. That sounds great. Anything else under general discussion tonight? Anything from the commission?
We have one more item.
You're right,
Sorry.
you're right. Let's go to item 2 under general discussion, automobile rental and leasing agencies. Who's presenting? All right, Director Akers, walk us through what the questions are.
So staff had a short memo put together regarding automobile rental and leasing agencies. It's currently an allowable use in our C1 and C2 districts. Per the township's ordinance, one item that I want to clarify is that this use isn't referring to like a car dealership, who leases vehicles. I mean, these uses more refer to automobile rental, like a Hertz or a U-Haul, which may, like Hertz or U-Haul. This includes more than car rental, includes rental of moving trucks and box trucks too. One of the other items that this use may include, as there's no other, is it's the closest use to this type of land uses, trailer and industrial equipment rental, could also be included. One of the reasons why we brought this forward is staff was asked by the supervisor's office to look into whether this land use should remain in our C1 and C2 district or potentially be moved to our industrial districts. The C1 and C2 district comprises a lot of properties up and down Belleville Road. It also comprises properties off Rawsonville and some other commercial areas in the township. A question came up as to whether those type of facilities, either large U-Haul facilities or large equipment rental facilities, were really appropriate, and if that's something that we thought we would want to see in those commercial districts. And we had taken a look at it, and we thought that maybe it's something that we should consider moving towards our industrial district to make sure that we're working on maintaining Belleville Road and some of the other commercial areas to maybe prevent some of these equipment rental items from coming out up front. So that's why we had brought it forward. We did look at communities that regulate automobile rental and leasing agencies, specifically Groseal Township, Westland, and Royal Oak. They all allow them under their general industrial district. One of the other more interesting communities that we found that has this land use was Birmingham. Actually allows it in the mixed use district, but also requires that all the rental vehicles be stored in a public or private parking garage. So it keeps it out of the front, it keeps it out of the road front and the entrances to the community. So essentially that's why we had brought this use forward. We are proposing moving this land use to M1, and we wanted to engage the Planning Commission to see how we felt about it.
Questions or comments?
Why, yes.
Sure.
Why M1 and not, say, M2 general industrial?
Under our zoning ordinance, they call it pyramid zoning.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Sorry, it's called pyramid zoning. So all of the permitted land uses under M1 are also allowed in M2. So I apologize, we should have
Thank you.
clarified that. So if we do list this use as a permitted use in M1, it will also be allowed in MT and M2.
Does this have an effect on Menards and the fact that they rent pickups and they may do box trucks too? I'm not sure.
They don't do box trucks. I know that they have one truck out in front of Menards. I don't think it would necessarily cause an issue with them. This land use is more for larger scale rental agencies.
But you're also proposing that we fold in just automobile.
Yes, because that the only land use that we have that regards to rental and leasing agencies is the automobile leasing and rental agency. There's no other land uses that we have that deal with equipment rentals or any of those.
Through the chair, who are you thinking that this is going to impact? Like, who is this going to impact if we make these changes? Because right now, I can't think of anybody who's on Belleville Road, and I'm not very familiar with Rawsonville Road. But who would this impact? Because if they have a functioning business right now.
I'm not aware of any existing automobile leasing and rental facilities in the township, so I don't think it would impact anybody. I know if the Planning Commission chose to move forward, we'd prepare a zoning ordinance amendment. I know we do a audit of the township to identify which properties it could potentially impact negatively, but there are none that I'm aware of in the township in these commercial districts. The one example that gets brought up is there's a U-Haul dealer that does leasing off Michigan Avenue. I think it's in Wayne or Inkster, but they have hundreds of U-Haul trucks parked out in front. And
Yeah, but that's got to be a 10-acre parcel or more, so. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
huge.
a pretty big property. But in our commercial district, we do have properties that could accommodate something like that. So I think that's why it was originally brought up for us to take a look at it, because we've worked really hard keeping the Belleville Road corridor and some of our other corridors looking attractive, and I'm not sure that would be something that would fit in.
I understand that because right now we combine them all together, but I'm not sure that moving automobile rentals, if it's solely automobile rental, out of a commercial district is a good direction to go to serve the public.
Can
I
I
see.
comment on that, please, through the chair? I can tell you that at one time, there was a Hertz rental at Willow Run, and they're gone. They weren't busy enough. So when we have to rent a car, we're like constantly driving customers further and further away. So it's put a strain on us that we lost Hertz at Willow Run. So just a comment, it impacts all of us. So they're gone. I wish they were here. I'm begging them to come back to Willow Run. But, you know, we do need rental, or we're taking that business elsewhere when it was right here at Willow Run. So I would like to have a rental company somewhere on Belleville Road.
If it was automobile.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So maybe, is there a way to consider a difference between the size of the vehicle or axles or tires or something? I don't know.
One of the options we could do is we could create a separate land use for maybe box truck rental and construction equipment rental, and maybe that would be a more appropriate solution.
Okay. Take a look at it, I guess.
Okay.
Anyone else? Anyone in the audience?
Sorry, is this use currently allowed in the industrial district?
In the airport.
I don't believe it is. It's allowed in the airport
It's in
district.
in the airport
but
district.
not,
okay.
which covers Willow Run, but I don't believe it's allowed in M1 or MT or M2.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, or through
Sure.
the chair.
No, it's general discussion. Just jump right in there.
If looking at what we have on Belleville Road now, and I know we are being very careful and protective of how it's being developed, but where on Belleville, if we were to put it on Belleville Road today, where would it go? Not trying to make light of it, you know. It's you know, we have the majority of, I guess you could say, open space north of Tyler. And knowing how some things are, you know, sometimes they look at where things are as far as easy access and where it is and what they can get to first. If we had the ability to get an automobile rental company back at Willow Run, if one opened up on Belleville Road, no one would go to the airport property because they would not want to go that extra half a mile, you know what I mean? But I guess my main, you know, just sitting here thinking out loud, you know, where would we put it on Belleville Road just to kick it around? You know, do we? How is the area, well, across the street from Township Hall? How's that whole vast area there? How is that coming along? Are we able to do or begin anything there, Director Akers, so to speak? I know there were a plethora of issues going on with it earlier on. How are we on that?
Well, the property across the street is you know, it's 181 acres. It's owned by Ford Land. It extends all the way from just for reference, it extends all the way from Belleville over to Beck. Approximately 50% of it is regulated wetland. And the area closest to Belleville Road is probably the driest portion of the parcel. Ford Land still owns it. They have not, any communications that I've had with them, they haven't expressed any desire to develop it. We did preliminarily have a conversation at one point about their wish to do industrial on a large portion of it, but it wasn't consistent with our zoning code where they were looking at doing it. So and it never panned out beyond just an idea. After that, I haven't heard anything from them. I do know that they had it listed at one point with a local broker, but I hadn't heard anything since they had it relisted. as far as potential places where this type of use can go, I mean, I guess, you know, to maybe backtrack, the automobile rental and leasing is more or less of my concern as much as it's the truck and the construction equipment and that type of leasing types uses. There's a couple properties on Belleville Road, south of Tyler, where something like that may be able to occur. You know, the one that I'm thinking about is there's a C2 zone parcel, which is immediately adjacent to Belleville Square, which is between them and the hotels, which is a fairly large commercially zoned property. And in addition to that, you know, I've seen other companies take up residence in you know, some of the shopping centers and apply for special approval to, you know, fence in an area of the parking lot and lease trailers and construction equipment too. So I guess if I were to tie in, you know, that was more of my concern. Another property where it may not be out of the realm of the possibility is the Lakewood Plaza over at Rawsonville and I-94. You know, as we all know, there's a Kmart there. And while, you know, it's a Kmart, Kmart doesn't own the property, they lease it. And a lot of the Kmarts that have closed over the last couple years have been properties that Kmart has owned because they were in the process of liquidating some of their property. But, you know, that being said, every time the Kmart closure list comes up, we always look at it to see if ours is on the list. One of the users of Kmart that frequently, you know, picks up those old properties and occupies those old spaces are self-storage or U-Haul. So it's been something that we've been cognizant of, but it may not be them. You know, there could be some other companies that could come in and want to do commercial equipment. Like I think company Alta does construction equipment rental services as well. So I think you know, the bigger concern that we had was that some of these truck rental and construction equipment rental businesses may be able to sneak in because their zoning ordinance isn't as clear with some of those types of uses. So you know, it might be more appropriate for us just to separate the two land uses and maybe put the box truck and the construction equipment rental and leasing in that industrial district and maybe leave automobile rental and leasing in the commercial district.
Okay, sounds good. So you got lots of homework on top of a lot of developers coming to talk to you. All right, now we are to anything else for general discussion from the commission, from the audience. In that case, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
White in support.
Support.
Commissioner Jar. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thanks. We're adjourned. Good discussions tonight.